Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is the Guilds of Ravnica set review for gold, artifacts, and land. We're at the home stretch as far as the set review goes for Guilds of Ravnica, so let's get right into it, guys, starting with our gold cards. This is a Dimir card, you can tell by the watermark and also the mana symbols here. Artful Takedown, a 4-mana common instant. Choose one or both, tap target creature. Target creature gets -2/-4 until end of turn. This is probably one of the best Dimir removal spells in all of the pool here for the set. You're going to always want to pick into this if you're in Dimir colors for draft and sealed. This card is amazing. Basically, if your opponent, if you're on the play and you're attacking in, you get to tap down something and also destroy something else, which is amazing. And if your opponent is attacking in, you get to tap down something and also destroy something, so that they're basically getting into a trap here with Artful Takedown, or weaken something as well. You can also weaken just a larger creature, like something from Selesnya or whatever. Either way, one of the best cards for draft and sealed for Dimir, hands down. Amazing card. Always pick into it if you're in those colors. Next up is Assassin's Trophy, one of the best cards ever printed ever. This is a Golgari symbol here. Actually, it just has the magic symbol. It's not Golgari. I guess it's too good for Golgari, right? It's a rare instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library. So if you didn't see Kenobi, Pleasant Kenobi's Tron Killer video, this one's a Tron Killer. Assassin's Trophy is amazing. It's gonna be one of those cards that's like, this is a great card to get into in your Golgari pack in pre-release. It's also just an amazing card overall to get into just in your box. I think right now pre-orders for this card is like 25 bucks. So they're really popular. They're going to be popular because it's one of the best removal spells because it hits permanent, not non-land permanent, so it hits everything. This card is amazing. I don't know how else to tell you that if you see this card at all, pick it. Not just for the value, but because it's also one of the best removal spells in a Golgari list if you're in those colors as well. So draft and sealed, it's amazing. Standard, it's amazing. Modern, it's amazing. Legacy, it's amazing. Vintage, it's amazing. It's an amazing card. Pick into it. Next up, we've got Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, a 4-mana 2/5 mythic legendary creature angel with flying, mentor, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to one target creature you control. Until end of turn, that creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample if it's red and gains vigilance if it's white. So you get to choose Aurelia if you want to, and it gets +2 and trample and vigilance as well, since it's a red-white creature. Very good card here. Again, a very huge bomb for you in the Boros colors. One of the best parts about Aurelia here is that she can just win the game by herself. And that's amazing. Super powerful in draft and sealed. If you're in Boros, this is a knockout bomb for you. In standard, this will definitely see some play in a Boros build somewhere. I'm not really sure where just yet, but having so many things on top of this card and being so cheap makes this ridiculous. Very powerful. I'm not sure about modern, maybe in a modern Angels list somewhere, but I do think in Commander, this might be the first Boros Angel we have for Commander. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure there, but still very, very powerful regardless. Love this card all around. Fantastic bomb for you in basically every format. Next up for you, we have Beacon Bolt, a 3-mana uncommon sorcery. Beacon Bolt deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. Also has Jumpstart, which is nice. This is probably okay. It's probably gonna be a deal 3 points of damage to something at sorcery speed, and then Jumpstart, deal 4 points of damage to something at sorcery speed. That's fine, I guess. The issue for me is that it's just a sorcery speed spell, so it's gonna be one of those cards that it's just kind of like your turn removal, which is fine. But it's not amazing. The problem here is that it's probably never going to do more than 3 or maybe 4 points of damage. For standard though, it might be able to do a little bit more if you put it into an Izzet spell, so that's maybe doing 4 to 5. However, it's not any target, it's just creatures, so that's probably where it's gonna not see any kind of standard play. So this is strictly a draft and seal card, so gonna see probably some nice 1 to 2 ofs in a Izzet list for you to have it do maybe 2 to 3 points of damage, which is just fine. Next up for you, we have a Beam Splitter Mage, a 2-mana 2/2 uncommon Vidalcan Wizard. By the way, every time I see this art, I think of Thanos. I don't know if it's just me, but it looks like Thanos. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only the mage, if you control one or more other creatures that spell could target, choose one of those creatures, copy that spell. The copy targets the chosen creature. Blah. I really like this because if you have lots of pump spells on in your deck for draft and sealed, it's really nice because you know, you put a pump spell on one thing and then you can copy it and put a pump spell on another thing. That's nice. The problem here is that it's really narrow, and so I'm not too sure it's going to see much play, other than like if you have a sure strike and you have the mage in the battlefield, sure strike, and then attack in. That's really good. But besides that, it's probably not going to see anything outside of that. So it's kind of one of those cards where it's like, if you get into a lot of nice combat tricks, this card's great. If you don't, it's probably not that great, and you should probably stay away from it. But just being a 2-mana 2/2 is fine. It's just a kind of a hard mana requirement here as well. So just kind of be wary about this card in draft and seal. Outside of that, probably not going to see any kind of play anywhere else. Moving on, we got Boros Challenger here, a 2-mana 2/3 uncommon human soldier with Mentor. You can pay 4 and it gets +1/+1 into a turn. So this is a card during previous season I thought was actually actively bad. But looking at all the Mentor cards, it's got 3 toughness, which means it's quite good. It can definitely survive a few swings for sure, and drafted and sealed, and it's got a pump ability as well, which while it is expensive, still does help get that Mentor trigger off quite easily for you. So I do like this card quite a bit for drafted and sealed. A high pick for you if you're in Boros as well. But yeah, I don't think this is going to see any kind of play outside of draft and sealed. It's very like close to seeing play in standard. I just think it's going to see play just in draft and sealed, thanks to the secondary ability not being that fantastic though. Moving on, we've got a Camaraderie. This is a 6-mana rare sorcery. You gain X life and draw X cards, where X is the number of creatures you control. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This is fine for Selesnya in drafted and sealed. This might see some play in standard. The problem, of course, is that it's a sorcery speed spell, so again, sorcery speed spells, they gotta be amazing for them to see standard play. And this probably isn't that for me. But I mean, you do gain lots of life, you do get some cards, and you do pump your entire board, which is very nice. So in draft and seal, this is a card that gives you a ton of card advantage and basically, you know, brings you back from the depths of a dead turn, which is nice, especially if you have a lot of small creatures on your side of the field, if you're in Selesnya, which this card is. So very good for that. But I don't think this card is necessarily a card that's going to win you the game once you pump your entire board state. That's just kind of like a secondary ability to me. The best ability on this is drawing X cards, where X is the number of creatures you control. That's like the best part of this card. Being able to draw 3 cards with this is worth it. If it just said that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay paying the 6 mana for this. It's fine. All right, moving on here. We've got a Centaur Peacemaker, a 3-mana 3/3 common Centaur Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, each player gains 4 lives. So this is one of those cards that makes you kind of think about life gains and that kind of thing, and life totals, and that life is a resource. And in draft and seal, this card is just fine. It's a 3-mana 3/3. That's perfectly easy to play. Very powerful for you for Selesnya. Gaining your opponent 4 life is actually not as bad as you think, because if you're ahead in the match, then gaining 4 life is not that bad. It may bring them up to even again. But keep in mind that life is a resource, and that if this also gains you 4 life as well. So it's not really moving anything. It's just like, you know, moving the amount of times you have to hit them to, like, you know, 4 extra points. So I think this card's pretty good for draft and sealed. I'm not too sure about this card being good for standard. Maybe for commander, if you want to put this in like a weird like green, white, black deck where they can't gain life or something like that. I think it's interesting there. But besides that, it's probably fine for draft and sealed for sure. And yeah, the art in this is really nice. Makes you think of Theros. Moving up, we've got Chance for Glory, a 3-mana mythic instant. Creature you control gain indestructible. Take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. So we kind of had this card previously in the Almond Camp block with Glorious End. The best thing about this though is that it's actually a little bit better because creatures you control gain indestructible. So it gives you a little bit more leeway into attacking in. So if your opponent's at 2 or 3 points of life, you have 4 or 5 creatures that are like 1/1s, but they have like, you know, 2 creatures that are like 5/5s. Attacking in with indestructible creatures really does help a lot. I think this is really powerful for that and helps you kind of close out a match in the Boros colors, which is really nice. So it's a really nice card for draft and seal. Probably not gonna see any kind of play anywhere else because taking an extra turn and then losing the turn after that is usually pretty narrow in standard. But in draft and sealed, it's kind of always down to the wire, you know. So I think this is a very good card for that format. Moving on, we've got Charnel Troll, a 3-mana rare 4/4 troll trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on the troll, otherwise sacrifice it. You can pay 2, discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on the troll. This card is fine. It's one of those cards that it's going to be huge probably like a 6/6 or 7/7, and then it'll probably die because you run out of creatures in Draft and Sealed. But that's definitely not a reason not to play it. It's still amazing. So if you can get out for 1 or 2 attacks with this card, it's still ridiculously powerful. And I cannot wait to pick into it if I'm in Golgari colors for Draft and Sealed. This might see some standard play just based on how it kind of grows turn over turn, and it can grow by 2 counters each turn as well if you have lots of stuff in the graveyard and lots of stuff in your hand too. Just keep in mind, it's always going to be a card that's like, it's going to eventually kill itself because you're going to run out of gas. But that's okay. It's still going to do a ton of damage going forward. All right, moving right along, we've got Conclave Cavalier. I think that's how you pronounce that. A 4-mana 4/4 uncommon Centaur Knight with Vigilance. And when it dies, create 2 2/2 green and white Elf Knight creature tokens with Vigilance. This card is amazing. It's a huge bomb for you in Draft and in Sealed. But this card is also very good for Standard, I feel like, in a Selesnya Knight deck. And I'm actually building that for a deck tech in the future. I really like this card. It's not Thragtusk, but it does create another creature, which is quite good. It actually creates 2 other creatures, turning that 4/4 into 2 2/2s, which is amazing. And they all have Vigilance, which is also super good as well. So this is very powerful for you for your Selesnya deck to get you know, your Convoke out very easily, because it's a one creature turning into 2 if it does die. I think this card is very good, and it kind of forces your opponent in Standard to use exile abilities like Brass's Contempt to make sure that you don't get the 2 2/2s if it does die like a regular way with a you know, Assassin's Trophy or something. I think this card is very powerful in every set with Draft, Sealed, and Standard in mind, and might see some Commander play because, again, it is a 4/4 that turns into 2 2/2s. That's pretty nice as well. Moving on, we've got Conclave Guildmage, a 2-mana 2/2 uncommon elf cleric. You can pay 1 green and tap it. Creature you control gain trample unto end of turn. That alone is pretty decent, but you can actually pay 6 and tap it. Create a 2/2 green and white elf knight creature token with Vigilance. That ability is too expensive for me to really want to use. In the mid to late game, I'll probably be able to use it if I have nothing to do. But the tap, give everything trample is very, very powerful if you are kind of like up against a giant wall of just stuff on your opponent's side of the field, like they have a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s like Boros. And you just got to get past them and do some damage. The Guildmage here can definitely help you out. It's also just a 2-mana 2/2. That's just a bear. That's perfectly fine as well. So I like it for that. I like it overall as far as just being a good card for you for Selesnya. A nice, you know, 10th or 11th pick for you in your creature curve in your Selesnya deck for Draft and Sealed. But besides that, probably not going to see any kind of play outside of Limited. Moving on, we've got Cackling Drake here, a 4-mana star 4 Drake uncommon with flying. Its power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So Enigma Drake was a card from Amonkhet block, and I think in the core set as well. So this is basically that for 1 extra mana and draws you a card. Very, very powerful in an Izzet spells list if you have lots of spells in your deck. Also, just being a flyer with 4 toughness is very good for 4 mana. Even if it's just a 2/4, it's still very powerful because it's going to be able to trade with most stuff in the air most of the time. Also drawing a card, very, very powerful. I really love this for Izzet just overall in Draft and Sealed, and I'm definitely willing to brew a deck with this in Standard as well. I think this is a very powerful card all around. Just does a lot of stuff, and it's a ton of fun to play with. The mana requirements are, of course, a little like constrained here, but I think because of all the guild gates and the lockets and all this fun stuff in Draft and Sealed, you probably will be able to cast this pretty easily on turn 5-ish if you're kind of stuck on mana a little bit. Moving up here, we've got a Darkblade Agent, a 3-mana 2/3 common human assassin. As long as you've survived this turn, or surveilled this turn, not survived. Darkblade Assassin has Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Very good card for Dimir here. It's whenever you surveil, not survive. Of course, you're surviving. Very powerful card. Just a 3-mana 2/3 by itself is pretty good. But giving it Death Touch and actually an ability whenever it hits, you draw a card. All of that is amazing. So it basically forces your opponent to want to block this card because it gives you card advantage, and that's gravy right there. So very, very powerful all around. Might see some Standard play, but I do think just for Draft and Sealed, though, this is just an all-star for Dimir. Moving on, we've got Deafening Clarion. This is a 3-mana rare sorcery. Choose one or both. It deals 3 damage to each creature, and creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. This is basically the only sweeper we have now in like Standard besides Golden Demise. So this is going to be one of those cards where you probably want to put it into a deck list somewhere, maybe a Jeskai control list or something like that. In Standard. As far as Draft and Sealed goes, this is a good sweeper for basically your opponent's entire board. If you have, you know, creatures on your side of the field, of course, they're going to die as well. But if they're more powerful than this, then they're probably going to be fine. Also giving your creatures lifelink, that's okay. It's kind of a nice cherry on top. I probably won't use that as much as I will just use the 3 damage to each creature. That part is very, very good. And yeah, just good for draft sealed, and probably going to see a lot of standard play because just again, limited resources on the sweepers in that format. Moving up, we've got Dimir Spybug, a 2-mana 1/1 insect flyer with menace, and whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on the Spybug. This card is super good for Dimir. Love this card. Get this out on turn 2 and just start surveilling like crazy. This is going to turn into a 2/2, 3/3, 4/4 flyer with menace. It's amazing. Very powerful for draft and sealed. Might even see some standard play based on just how aggressively costed this guy is. I do love it all around. Very powerful pick for you for Dimir. If you're into Dimir and you're surveilling a lot, this is a great card for you for that set. Moving up, we've got Disinformation Campaign. This is a 3-mana uncommon enchantment. When there's a battlefield, you draw a card and each opponent discards a card. And whenever you surveil, you can return this card to its owner's hand. This is fine. This feels more like a commander card to me, or a brawl card. Of course, brawl doesn't really exist that much anymore, but a commander card to me for sure. I do like it as far as being a card that gives you card advantage and, you know, takes away card advantage from your opponent in draft and in sealed. So it could be one of those where you could put into your Dimir deck list if you have a lot of surveil stuff. Not probably going to see any standard play with this card, but I do think for draft and sealed, this is probably like borderline okay to like bad because it just doesn't do enough for me. For 3 mana, it draws you 1 card and your opponent loses 1 card, and you can repeat this if you surveil. So I think that's probably okay. Moving right along, we have the Amara, Soul of the Accord. This is a 2-mana 2/2 rare legendary creature elf cleric. Whenever Soul of the Accord becomes tapped, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Wish they were elves. Elf soldiers would be great, or elf knight would be great, but sadly they are not. This is probably fine for your Selesnya deck for convoking in drafted and sealed, and probably will see some standard play whenever you convoke stuff as well in standard. I don't know about it being that useful in standard. It feels like it's just going to die immediately, but still quite good for a draft and in sealed. I do think using this as a convoke card other than just attacking with it to make it tap is the better option here because, again, it's creating you tokens every single time you decide to convoke something. So in Selesnya, this is probably quite good, but in standard, probably a little slow. A little weak there on that end. Wish it was more maybe a 2/3 for 2. That would be nice, especially because of how aggressively costed it is, the green and white, or maybe even a 3/3 for 2. That'd be great as well. But for draft and sealed though, great card to create lots of 1/1s for you. Moving on, we've got Erstwhile Trooper. This is a 3-mana common 2/2 zombie soldier. Discard a creature card. The trooper gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Activates ability only once each turn. Kind of sad here that I can't get to pump this multiple times by discarding multiple creature cards. In Golgari though, a 3-mana 4/4 attacking end is pretty good. It's also a card that can be used like on your opponent's turn as well. So if they're attacking it, you can discard a creature card, make it a 4/4 that way. So quite powerful that way as well. So I think this card is probably going to be a high draft pick for you for Golgari in draft and sealed. But because of the way it's kind of built for standard, I feel like it's probably not going to see any kind of standard play whatsoever, which is kind of sad. Moving on, we've got Errata the Silencer, a 4-mana 3/5 rare vampire assassin. It can't be blocked, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile target creature that player controls and put a hit counter on that card. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. Etrata's owner shuffles Etrata into their library. So very interesting card here. If you have this in Dimir in draft and sealed, this is a card that's just going to win you the game unless they have removal. If they have removal, then this is, you know, just a nothing card. But if they don't, then you're just going to win the game. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure this will be seeing a lot of standard play as well because it just has to hit 3 times and then your opponent is, you know, dead. So this is an amazing card, basically just good for protecting it in a like maybe a Dimir control list in standard. There's also Dimir control in draft and sealed as well, so this could be a card that's just, you know, bulldoze your opponent if you get into it. It's an amazing card overall, and of course, it's going to be a card that you're going to see in Commander as well. So just prepare for that. It's going to be an amazing card for Commander as well. Moving on, we've got Firemind's Research. This is a 2-mana enchantment rare. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Firemind's Research. You can pay 2, remove 2 charge counters from Firemind's Research, draw a card. You can also pay 2 and remove 5 charge counters from Firemind's Research, deal 5 damage to any target. For draft and sealed, this is okay. Kind of not what you want to be putting into your deck list unless you just have a ton of instant sorcery spells. This feels more like a commander card to me, where you can just kind of ramp up a lot of counters and then just, start demolishing opponents, which I think is amazing, or drawing lots of cards. This also feels like a card that might see some standard brew around play if you get it out early enough. It is 2 mana, so it is a card that can be aggressively, casted. So it could be a card you play on turn 2 and then just start, opting and, charter coursing and things like that, where you're drawing lots of cards and doing lots of things. So you build up all these counters really quickly on top of this, so you can, either do 5 points of damage to your opponent's face or a planeswalker or a creature, or just draw more cards because you have Niv-Mizzet on the battlefield. So I think this card's probably going to be seeing a lot of commander and standard play, but it feels a little awkward in drafted and sealed, where you're going to have a limited number of instant and sorcery spells in your actual deck, because your deck, again, is like 40 cards. Moving up here, we've got Garrison Sergeant. This is a 5 mana 3/3 Vaishino Soldier. It has double strike as long as you control a gate. So this is a card where a gate matters, and that's perfectly fine for me. I think a 5 mana 3/3 though is a little much. It's a little highly costed there, but having double strike makes it really good if you have gates. So if you have gates in your deck and you have this in your deck as well, I think it's fine. But if you don't have gates, then this is way too expensive to pay for a 3/3. You should probably just put it in, the sideboard in your draft and sealed deck. There we go, and not use it at all. And yeah, not going to see any kind of play outside of limited. But the art's nice, right? Looks like he's waving down traffic or something. All right, moving up here, we've got Glowspore Shaman, a 2 mana 3/1 Elf Shaman, uncommon. Whenever he enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You may put a land card from your graveyard on top of your library. Wish this was just a card. That'd be amazing. Sadly, it's not. It's just a land, and I probably won't be using that land unless I'm just really mana screwed or something like that in draft and sealed. I've seen some people say this might be good for standard play, but I do think you can be doing much more with 1 less mana with Stitcher Supplier from Core Set 2019. So this is a card that probably won't see any kind of play in standard, and I'm kind of leery on it seeing play in draft and seal, just because it's kind of milling you, and 2, it's really not doing anything as far as getting you any kind of value back other than just giving you a land, which I guess if you're mana fixing, it's probably fine for that. But also being a 3/1, it's going to just immediately trade with something as well, which is probably fine for a 2 mana 3/1. So I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence on this for draft and sealed, but I think it's probably going to see very little standard play. Just not that hot on this card overall. Next up, we've got Goblin Electromancer. This is a card I'm kind of hot on. This is a 2 mana 2/2 Goblin Wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is, the Storm card for you for Modern. Definitely going to see play in Standard somewhere. Don't really know where just yet as far as in Standard, but I do think this is a fun card to play. Baral saw some play in Commander as well, and this obviously will see play there as well too. Draft and Sealed. This is a fun card if you have lots of instant and sorceries. Again, it's one of those things where Draft and Sealed, you're probably going to get into maybe 4 or 5 of them, and that'll be it. But Electromancer is very powerful for Standard and Commander and Modern, so you definitely will see play lots there. Moving up here, we've got Golgari Findbroker. This is a 4 mana 3/4 uncommon Elf Shaman. When there's a battlefield, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Love this. It's a 3/4, which is quite good. So to be able to trade or block some good stuff for 4 mana, that's fine. It also returns target permanent card, which is great. So if you have a removal spell or a big creature in your graveyard, you get to get it back with Findbroker in the mid to late game, and that's quite good as well. So I think this is great for draft and seal. Not going to see any kind of play outside of that. But again, one of the things that all these cards kind of share is that the mana cost is a little constrictive here. So this might just be a turn 5 play instead of a turn 4 play, depending on how your mana is kind of shaking out. Moving up here, we've got Hammer Dropper, a 4 mana 5/2 giant soldier with Mentor. By itself, it's probably a bad card for draft and sealed, but because it has Mentor on top of it, it's good because it's attacking in and giving something else a trigger. And more often than not, they want to block the Hammer Dropper instead of blocking whatever the other thing that gets Mentor on top of it, So I think it's fine for that. Again, I was kind of negative on this card in the previous season, but I think it's probably okay in draft and sealed. Just not going to see any kind of play outside of that. Yeah, I think it's probably fine there. But yeah, not going to see any kind of play elsewhere. Moving on, we've got House Guildmage, a 2 mana 2/2 human wizard, uncommon. You can pay 2, target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. You can also pay 3 and Surveil for 2. This is okay. Having Surveil on this for just 3 mana is quite good. I think this is a very good card for that. Also does make sure that if your opponent does attack out with a creature, it doesn't untap. We can kind of keep a creature tapped down with the Guildmage, which is very good as well. I do think if you get into this in your draft and sealed pool, if you're into Mirror, this is a great card to slot into your deck because again, it's giving you lots of value with Surveil, and it's giving you good like protection by tapping down creatures. Next up, we've got a Hypothizzle. This is a card Snoop Dogg obviously created. This is a 5-mana instant common. Draw 2 cards, then you may discard a non-land card. When you do, Hypothizzle deals 4 damage to target creature. This is interesting. I'm not too sure if this will see standard play. It feels like it might. For 5 mana though, it's quite expensive. But you know, being able to do 4 damage and draw 2 cards, pretty good overall for standard. But for draft and seal, this card is amazing. A great card for you if you're an Izzet. And look at that art, just overall ridiculous. I think this card is going to see a lot of play as well in Commander, just because of the flavor of the card overall. Just a fun card to begin with. We have Ionize here. This is a 3-mana instant rare. Counter target spell. Ionize deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. Counterburn, finally. This is the best counterburn card we've had ever, I feel like. So it's going to see modern play, going to see commander play, going to see standard play. And of course, if you get into this and you're in Izzet in drafted and sealed, it's going to see draft and sealed play for sure as well. Being able to counter something and also deal points of damage to your opponent for just 3 mana is super powerful. Obviously, this is a card with, you know, kind of constrictive mana cost, with it being 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 colorless, but still very, very powerful. Sometimes it's better for this to be multicolor than it is to be solidly blue. So I think this card is very, very good. You're always going to get into this if you see it, if you're an Izzet, and yeah, going to see all kind of play in every other format ever. Just an amazing card overall. Moving up, we've got Izoni Thousand Eye. This is a 6-mana 2/3 Elf Shaman rare with Undergrowth. Whenever it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token for each creature in your graveyard. You can pay to sack another creature, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So in Golgari and Draft and Sealed, this is probably fine, especially because of the Undergrowth ability, making this a 2/3 and then making lots of 1/1s, which is great. In Standard, I don't think this is aggressively costed enough. Especially just being a 2/3, I feel like it's just gonna hit the board and just die immediately. But I feel like this card is really meant for Commander and you know, having fun there. So I think this card's definitely there for that. And yeah, making lots of 1/1s when this enters the battlefield is pretty great. And again, sacking creatures and gaining life and drawing a card is not bad either for Golgari. And we'll definitely see that in Draft and Sealed if you get into it as well. So I think it's fine for Draft and Sealed. Probably won't see any kind of standard play, but I do think you'll see some Commander play, of course, because it's a very flavorful Golgari card. Moving on, we've got Join Shields. This is a 5-mana instant uncommon. Untap all creatures that you control. They gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Very powerful overall. I think this card is going to be a card that might win the game for you because, again, it gives you indestructible and hexproof on top of all of your creatures and untaps them. So defensively, it's amazing because it is at instant speed, and offensively, it's really good and might win the game for you in Draft and in Sealed. It's too aggressively costed to see any kind of standard or modern play or anything like that, but I think maybe in Commander it could see some play because, again, it's untapping everything you control and giving them hexproof and giving them indestructible, and I think all that is pretty much gravy. You want to be doing all of that in Commander. Moving on, we've got Justice Strike. This is a 2-mana instant uncommon. Target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. This card is super fun, a great removal spell for you for drafted and sealed. Might see some standard brewing around. I think this card is super good for that. Just a very powerful all-around card, especially against lots of good flyers in the format right now. Especially in standard where you have cards like Rekindling Phoenix where it can just, you know, hit itself and die. I think that's fine. I do think that Justice Strike, though, is very powerful for draft and sealed. Good removal for you for Boros, and you're always going to pick into it if you see it. Moving on, we got Knot of Autumn here, a 3-mana rare 2/1 Dryad Knight. When it enters the battlefield, choose one, put 2 +1/+1 counters on the Knight, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you gain 4 life. This is just a blowout staple for you for draft, sealed, standard, and modern. Gonna see a ton of play in modern, especially because it does so many things. Probably replacing just Kitchen Sphinx for you in a lot of your modern decks, but very powerful regardless in drafted and sealed. Making a 4/3 is great, or just destroying artifact or enchantment is also good, or gaining 4 life if you're behind is also good, and making a 2/1. All of these are pretty good because it gives you a body as well on top of just paying 3 mana. So very powerfully costed. Going to see a lot of standard play, going to see a lot of modern play, and of course going to be a good draft pick for you in your Selesnya deck for draft and sealed. Moving on, we've got Lazav, the Multifarious. This is a 2-mana mythic 1/3 legendary creature shapeshifter. When it enters the battlefield, surveil for 1. You can pay X, and Lazav becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X, except its name is Lazav, the Multifarious. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. So this is interesting. In Draft and in Seal, this card probably is pretty bad because you don't have a lot of support for it. I think for Commander, this card's really meant for Commander. For Standard, this card is, again, it's kind of interesting and like very unique. It gives you the ability to make 2 legendary creatures with the same name, basically, on the battlefield, because one is named Lazav and one is named whatever, something else. And that's really fun. But I think that's, again, just for Commander. Really flavorful and really interesting there. But yeah, probably just feels like it's going to be just for Commander only. A 2-mana 1/3 as well in Draft and in Sealed is just not fantastic. But being able to surveil for 1 when it enters the battlefield, I guess that makes up for it overall. And turning this into, you know, a flyer if you have one in the graveyard into Mirror is quite good as well. So it really depends, I guess, on what you have in your deck. You really need some good support for this card to make it work in Drafted and Sealed. But for Commander, this card is hilarious. Just straight up hilarious. Moving up here, we've got League Guildmage, a 2-mana 2/2 human wizard. You can pay for a tap it, draw a card. You can also pay X in red and tap it. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with converted mana cost X. You may choose new targets for the copy. For Draft and Seal, this card is amazing for Izzet, and I think this is going to see some nice play in a Izzet Wizards list in Standard. I'm definitely brewing with it right now. Very good at drawing new cards in the mid to late game, and very good at being able to, you know, copy a Lightning Strike if you have it in Standard. So for 3 mana, you get to copy a Lightning Strike. I think this is pretty gravy for me. Very powerful all-around card. Gonna see play in that, and it's probably gonna see play in Commander as well in some Wizards lists too. Just a very powerful Izzet card for you overall. Moving up, we've got Lazav Champion here, a 3-mana 2/2 Elf Knight. This is an uncommon here. Whenever it attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Lazav Champion gets +1/+1 into end of turn for each creature tapped this way. You can also pay 5 and create a 1/1 White Soldier creature token with lifelink. This is doing a lot of things for you in Drafted and Sealed, and I think this is very good, especially if you're up against a big board state, like your opponent has a big 5/5, and you have a lot of 1/1s. You know, tap those down and make this a 5/5 or 6/6 and be able to trade out or something. Very powerful. It also has, in the mid to late game, you have the ability to, you know, pump into this and start creating 1/1s to make this even larger as you attack in. So a fantastic Draft and Sealed bomb for you. Probably a bit too slow for Standard. I have tried to brew around it a little bit, but it feels a little too slow for that format. I wish it was maybe a 2/3. That probably would help it a lot in Standard, but I do think for Draft and Seal, this is a huge bomb win for you in Selesnya. Moving on up, we have Legion Guildmage here, a 2-mana 2/2 human wizard. This is the Boros Guildmage. This is an uncommon. You can pay 6 and tap it, deals 3 damage to each opponent. You can pay 3 and tap it, and tap another target creature. Again, for Draft and Seal, this is probably okay because it taps other creatures, which is very good. But paying 6 to deal just 3 points of damage to an opponent is probably fine. It's just really expensive to me. I think if you're in Boros, you probably don't want to be using that first ability, but the second ability, definitely want to be using. The first ability kind of rings Commander to me because it's doing each opponent, which I think is nice. So definitely going to be seeing play probably in a Commander deck somewhere. I do think the art on this card is quite good, but probably not going to see any kind of Standard play besides that. Next up, we have March of the Multitudes, an X and green/white mythic instant with Convoke. Create X 1/1 White Soldier creature tokens with lifelink. I don't know. I think in Draft and Seal, this card's probably pretty good, making you 3 or 4 different 1/1s at instant speed on your opponent's turn. That's quite good. In Standard, I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be pretty good with throwing in black with all of the Saproling stuff we had from Dominaria. That's probably where this is going to shine the most. It's just going to make the mana cost really difficult for you to play. I do think, though, this card is probably going to see some play in a Commander deck where you want to go really wide, and you have a lot of mana to dump into it as well. So this feels more like a Commander card to me. Might see some play in a Standard list somewhere. Just a lot of brewing needs to happen for this card to make it good for me. Making them lifelink is also pretty decent. Do wish that they maybe had Vigilance instead of lifelink. I think that might be a bit better, especially because we have so many Convoke cards in the Selesnya stuff where we want to be able to use them for attacking as well as for Convoking. So very close to me. I think this card is probably okay in Draft and Sealed, making you 3 or 4 different 1/1s. But again, they're just 1/1s, so they may just die immediately to whatever board state you're up against. So this card's okay if you're ahead and pretty terrible if you're behind. But it does give you life, so you kind of can, I guess, balance out once you play it. Moving up here, we have Mnemonic Betrayal. This is a 3-mana mythic sorcery. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn. You may spend mana as though were any mana of any type to cast those spells. At the beginning of your next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return them to their owner's graveyard. Exile Mnemonic Betrayal. This card feels like a really like blowout commander card to me because of how much stuff you can do from like all opponents' graveyards. That's really crazy. As far as a card for draft and seal, this is a card that just like, you know, you use this, grab their 1 or 2 removal spells and use them, which I think is pretty good. And in standard, this might be a good sideboard card for Dimir control, maybe, depending on what kind of setup you're going up against. But this kind of feels more like a commander card to me through and through. The art on this card though is legitimately insane. Clearly, you definitely outdid yourself on this card. This card is crazy, like as far as the look on it, just really good. Next up here we have Molder Hulk. This is a 9 mana 6/6 uncommon fungus zombie. You can it also has undergrowth as well. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. And when it enters the battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it gives you a land as well for using this. I wish it had trample so badly. It feels like it needs to have trample, but it does not. Being able to cast this pretty effectively, like on turn 5 or 6, in a Golgari list in draft and sealed means this is a very good card for you for draft and sealed. For standard, this card might see some brew around play. I feel like it's almost there to be able to see some play. If it had trample, this would be an amazing card, but since it does not, it's just okay being able to be blocked by 1/1s forever and ever. Very sad there. But for draft and seal, this card is perfectly fine. Moving up here, we have a Night Veil Predator, a 4 mana 3/3 uncommon vampire with flying, death touch, and hexproof. This card is a huge bomb for you in Dimir in draft and sealed, and will likely see some play in a hexproof list as well in a standard list. I feel like if someone puts this with a Curious Obsession deck, then that's amazing, and I can't wait to do that myself. So I think this card is ridiculous overall. Just a 3/3 flying death toucher is already pretty good, but giving it hexproof just makes it really difficult to interact with, and means that you basically just have to trade with it, which is really difficult in drafted and sealed. Really, really good. Almost first pickable, honestly. Almost first pickable. Moving on here, we have NumottheNummy Parun. This is a 6 mana 5/5 dragon wizard. Obviously, this is a rare. It's a legendary creature. This spell can't be countered. It has flying, and whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. This card feels like it's going to be very powerful in standard. Definitely going to be a new commander for the the NumottheNummy lovers out there. And for draft and in seal, this card is amazing. A 6 mana 5/5 flyer. That's already pretty good, but it can't be countered, which is even better. And being able to ping for 1 whenever you draw a card, and also draw a card whenever anyone else does an instant and sorcery spell, as well as you doing an instant and sorcery spell. This card is amazing. Just a giant blowout for you for draft and sealed. Very powerful in basically every single set. A lot of people are saying it's kind of too aggressively costed with the 3 blue, 3 red, but I kind of disagree here. I feel like it's probably going to be a really good play for you in draft and sealed, and will probably come out on turn 6 based on all the guild gates are going on and the lockets as well. So just an amazing NumottheNummy card here overall. Moving up, we've got Notion Rain, a 3 mana common sorcery. Surveil for 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain deals 2 damage to you. For Dimir, this is fantastic for draft and sealed. I don't think this will see any kind of standard play, but it's super close to being able to do that. So I think it might see some standard brew around play for sure. Being able to surveil and then draw 2 cards and then deal 2 damage to yourself. The 2 damage is like I don't even care about that. This is almost like the new Glimmer of Genius, honestly. Because you can get those 2 cards off the top and then draw 2 new cards, or if those are cards you really like, you can draw into them. Very, very powerful. Being able to ping yourself for 2, I think is totally worth it for this card. So might see some play for sure in standard. Even though it is a sorcerer speed spell, I think it's still very, very powerful for 3 mana. But in draft and seal, this is a great card for you for Dimir, and a card you always want to get into for sure if you want to draw some cards. Moving up here, we have Ocarina Assassin, a 3 mana 1/1 uncommon elf assassin with death touch, and all creatures able to block Ocarina Assassin do so. The best part about this card is that it's all creatures able to block the assassin do so. So if you have the ability to pump this up and you can distribute your points across multiple creatures, this card is amazing. But also just being a card that like your opponent has to trade with is also very good as well. So I think this card's very good for you in Golgari, a card that's obviously going to trade with something as it attacks in, which is very good. If your opponent has like one large creature like a 5/5 on their side of the field, just attack in and have the assassin, kill it, which is very nice. So love it for that. I do think the assassin is very good, basically a removal spell for you for Golgari, and I think it's probably too expensive to see standard play, but it's very close. Might see some brew around play for that format though. Next up, we have Ral Izzet Viceroy. This is a 5-mana mythic, 5 loyalty, legendary planeswalker Ral. You can +1 look the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. You can -3, deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. And -8, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target and you draw 2 cards. This is probably okay for an Izzet counter deck. Very, very good for standard. If you get into this in drafted and sealed, this is a huge bomb for you. Being able to get you, card advantage, removal, and if you emblem, you just win the game, basically. I think this card's very powerful overall. And of course, it's going to see a lot to play in Commander as well. So I think it's a very good card for you. The problem here is, of course, is in standard is that we have Teferi in standard right now. And Ral does stuff very similar to Teferi. And I feel like there's not really that many big reasons to go into a Izzet list or a Jeskai control list right now. So I think Ral might be sitting on the back burner until Teferi rotates. So I think it's very powerful regardless. So you probably should pick up a copy if you want some. But for draft and seal, this card is super good. A giant bomb for you regardless. Moving up here, we have a Rhizome Lurcher, a 4-mana 2/2 common fungus zombie. Okay, I want to keep wanting to say something else. Creature zombie. Undergrowth. Enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 encounters on it for each equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So a 4-mana 2/2 that can turn to a 4-mana 5/5 or a 6/6. That's okay, but it's a little narrow. So if you get into this pretty early on in your match, it could just be a 4-mana 2/2 forever, which is not good at all. So I think this card probably balances itself out as being a 4-mana 5/5, which is probably where you want it to be in draft and in sealed. Probably not going to see any kind of standard play outside of that, just a little too slow and overly costed, but I do think for draft and sealed, this card is perfectly fine. Moving right along, we have the Rosemane Centaur, a 5-mana 4/4 Centaur soldier with Convoke and Vigilance. This is not bad at all. I think this card's pretty powerful in draft and in sealed. It might even see some play in a standard deck just based on it having Convoke. So Convoke is one of those mechanics where you really want to try and get as much value as you possibly can in standard, and it might see standard play because of that. But I think for draft and sealed, this card is perfectly fine and usable. A 5-mana 4/4 with Vigilance is by itself pretty good, but making this a 3-mana or 2-mana 4/4 with Vigilance is quite good as well. So I think this card is all around pretty amazing for you for a Selesnya in draft and in sealed. Moving up, we've got Sky Knight Legionnaire, a 3-mana 2/2 common human knight with haste and flying. This is okay. Having a 3-mana 2/2 flyer, that's perfectly fine. I'll take that all day long, but having haste as well means it's very, very powerful. So I can't wait to play this in draft and sealed. Not going to see any kind of play outside of that. It's just kind of one of those cards. It's a bread and butter draft and sealed card for sure. And you're going to see lots of play in those formats. So not going to see any kind of play in standard, modern, commander, or anything like that. Moving up here, we've got Sonic Assault, a 3-mana instant common. Tap target creature. Sonic Assault deals 2 damage to that creature's controller with Jumpstart. And of course, Jumpstart is you can cast a spell from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs, then exile this card. I like Sonic Assault here just because it's an instant speed ability, so it gets to tap down and a creature that's attacking in on your opponent's turn, which is quite nice. Or you get to tap down on a creature whenever you're attacking it, which is quite nice. And it gets to deal, again, 2 points to that creature's controller. I wish the 2 points could go to another target creature. That'd be probably the better play for me. Instead of doing 2 points to a creature's controller. But I think it's probably okay. I think it's probably going to be one of those cards that's going to be a nice pick for you in an Izzet list for sure in draft and sealed. But because of how narrow this is, it's not going to see any kind of play outside of draft and sealed. Next up for us, we have the Somala Woodshaper, a 4-mana 2/1 common elf druid. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or enchantment card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It would be great if it was like a creature and an enchantment, but it's a creature or an enchantment, which is kind of not great. And it's also just a 2/1 for 4 mana, which is a little expensive to me. So this feels like it's kind of a bad card for draft and sealed. I wish it was like maybe like a 1/4. That might have been a better idea than a 2/1. If you really wanted it for that. I don't think this is going to see any kind of play in standard at all. Again, just too highly costed here. I'm not going to pay 4 mana to just dig for 4. I'd rather have like a nice bomb in this slot instead in standard. So for draft and seal, if you really need one of those 15th pick creatures, this is probably fine to help you dig for your bomb. But besides that, probably not going to see any kind of play whatsoever. Next up, we've got Swarm Guildmage, a 2-mana 2/2 uncommon elf shaman. You can pay 5 tap it, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain medicine to end of turn. You can also pay 2 tap it and you gain 2 life. The Midas ability here, it really is a card ability that's going to win you the game, which is really good for drafted and sealed. And getting 2 life isn't terrible either if you just have the mana to spend on your opponent's instep. So I think that's probably fine. It's a good way to kind of like come back from a match if you're really behind in a game. So this might see some commander play because of that. I do think though for standard, this is probably not where you want to be doing. A 2-mana 2/2 again for draft and sealed is okay, but for standard, just not that great. But yeah, that pay 5 and give everything +1 in menace is really powerful and is an ability you're probably going to get into quite a bit in drafted and sealed. Next up here we have a Swath Cutter Giant. This is a 6-mana 5/5 giant soldier with uncommon. It also has vigilance, and whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. For Boros, this is a huge bomb for you, and if you're in Boros and you see this, pick it immediately. A 6-mana 5/5 with vigilance by itself is amazing, but a 6/6 5/5 with vigilance that, like, you know, pings your opponent's entire board state for 1 is ridiculous. Basically meaning this is a 6/6, you know, being able to trade with something on your opponent's side of the field that's that big. I think it's a very good card here. Just all around, just ridiculous. I do love the art on this card as well. Very, very powerful. And I think in standard, this card will probably see no play. But in drafted and sealed, this is a huge bomb for you. Next up, we've got a Swiftblade Vindicator. This is a 2-mana 1/1 rare human soldier. It has double strike, vigilance, and trample. This is a card that's basically built for mentor in mind. Attack with this with a mentor card, it becomes a 2/2 double strike, vigilance, trample creature. So very powerful that way. Besides that, if it's not around Mentor, it really needs auras to survive as well. So it's one of these cards where if you're in Boros, you're probably gonna have a lot of Mentor in your draft and sealed pool, and this is a great card to go along with that. If you're not in Boros, this card does nothing for you and you don't want to get into it. And in standard, this is really only good for a Boros deck as well. So I'm not too sure if this is gonna see any kind of play outside of that. It might see some play in a aura deck in modern, perhaps. I think it's pretty interesting because it is doing a lot of things for just 2 mana. So very cool for that. Next up, we have Tajik Legion's Edge. This is a 3-mana 3/2. This is a rare legendary creature human soldier with haste, mentor, prevent on non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control, and you can pay 2, and the Legion's Edge gains first strike until end of turn. This is doing a lot of things. It's very powerful if you're in Boros for drafted and sealed. And standard, probably going to see this a lot as well in a Boros list, again because of the haste and mentor most of all, but also, you know, being able to prevent all non-combat damage to other creatures, which is very nice. Kind of like a Shalai ability here, if the opponent is like, you know, wanting to do the Deafening Clarion or something like that against your board state. Very powerful for that. I do think that this card's just okay though in standard as far as not being able to, or as far as being able to protect your entire board state. But besides that, it's just a very aggressive card. And being able to give it first strike as well is very good too. So getting an aura on top of this in drafted and sealed probably will just, you know, end the game for you, like auto win. So very powerful there. I think it's a very good card overall. And of course we'll see commander play because it's a great legendary creature as well. So very good card overall, just all around amazing. Next up, we've got Thief of Sanity, a 3-mana rare 2/2 Spectre Flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though were any mana of any type to cast a spell. So this is kind of like Gonti, honestly, but it happens every single time it hits you. It's your opponent, which is very, very good. Again, 3-mana 2/2 flyer is amazing, and this ability on top is just redonkulous. Being able to mill your opponent for 3, essentially, and having one of the spells that you can cast from now on, I think that's amazing. Just all around amazing card here. I don't think it's going to see any kind of play outside of probably standard. It's a very good card for standard, very good card for draft and sealed, but probably not going to see any kind of play elsewhere. Next up, we have Thought Erasure, a 2-mana uncommon sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card. This also has Surveil for 1. Thought Erasure is quite good, probably going to see play in a standard sideboard somewhere in the Dimir list. For like control somewhere. I think it's okay as far as a sideboard card for drafted and sealed as well. Just not that powerful as far as it, you know, being so mana constrictive, but it is good because it grabs a non-land card, so that can be a creature or an instant sorcery spell or enchantment or whatever, and it also has the added advantage of being able to, you know, surveil for 1 as well. So if this is instant speed, it'd be amazing. I just can't wait till we have one of these instant speed spells. That'd be great. But yeah, Thought Erasure is very, very good for you for draft and sealed as far as a good sideboard card. Might see play in the main board in draft and sealed just because it's doing a lot. And I think it's going to see sideboard play definitely in a Dimir control list in Standard. Next up here for us, we have 1,000-Year Storm, a 6-mana enchantment mythic. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant and sorcery spell you've cast before this turn. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is so close to being standard playable. So close. So close, guys. I think this card's very good for Commander. I think this card's like super fun for Draft and Sealed. The problem for Draft and Sealed, though, is, of course, is that you really need to start stacking lots of instant and sorcery spells, and that doesn't really work that well in Draft and Sealed just based on how big your deck is. So there could be a deck in Standard that wants to use this somewhere, which would be really fun, and I think this would be a great card for it. But definitely this card is for Commander players, like basically exclusively. It just seems like a Commander player card that, you know, you really want to have it to go off in that format. Next up, we've got Tristani Discordant. This is a 5-mana mythic 1/4 Dryad. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. At the beginning of your instep, each player gains control of all creatures they own. This is probably fine. I think this card's quite good in Draft and Sealed. A great bomb for you to create, you know, 3 creatures and, you know, pump your entire board state. That's pretty good. The last clause on this is, I mean, it's very narrow, but, you know, I guess it could see some play for sure in Draft and Sealed if you have something like that. Or not in Draft and Sealed, in Commander. But I think for Standard, this is just basically replacing Regal Caracol in Standard, which is fine. Not that powerful, but a good sideboard card for those kind of decks. I think in Draft and Sealed, though, you probably, like, if you're not in Selesnya and you're not wanting to get, you know, 3 1/1s out, then this is probably not great for you. But I do think that, you know, pumping your entire board state is what makes this the biggest draw on this card by far. And yeah, of course, this is going to see lots of Commander play too. Next up, we have Truefire Captain. This is a 4-mana 4/3 Human Knight uncommon with Mentor, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target players. So, Star of Extinction combo here in Standard. There you go. I think this card's very good for Standard as far as like bring a combo deck around it. Very fun for Draft and Sealed because it is a 4/3 and it'll probably just kill whatever that kills it, which is very fun. Or if your opponent does burn it, it gets to, you know, burn your opponent as well, which is very powerful too. Overall, this card's very, very good, and definitely we'll see some Commander play as well because it's just so flavorful. It's just a great flavorful card overall too. Undercity Uprising is a 4-mana common sorcery. Creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Then target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. For Golgari, this card's quite good because, again, it's giving everything Death Touch, and you get to fight something, which is very good, which means it's going to die because of the Death Touch clause on top of it. So even if it does lose the fight, it can still win the war. So for Draft and Sealed, very, very powerful, good removal spell. And of course, giving all of your creatures Death Touch is good as well. Not going to see any kind of play in Standard. I feel like it might see play in a Commander list somewhere. But for Draft and Sealed, this is a bread and butter removal spell for sure for your Golgari deck. Next up, we've got Underrealm Lich, a 5-mana mythic 4/3 zombie elf shaman. If you would draw a card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put one into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Pay for life. Underrealm Lich gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. Very powerful in Draft and Sealed, might even win you the game, which is ridiculous. Other than that, I feel like it might be okay to play in a Standard deck somewhere. Not really sure where just yet. Maybe in a Golgari zombie list for sure. We'll kind of see there. I think where this card really is going to shine, though, is in Commander. Just being able to, you know, look at the top 3 cards, then put one into your hand and the rest into your graveyard is quite fun. Especially when you have a lot of cards in your deck list, like in Commander. And being able to protect this by just paying 4 life is also good, especially when you have a lot of life, like in Commander. So this feels like a great Commander card all around. The only thing I don't really understand here is that it's not a legendary creature, which is very strange. Feels like it should have been a legendary creature based on the art, based on the mana cost, and based on what it does. Feels like it should have been legendary. Kind of a missed opportunity there, I feel like. Next up is Unmoored Ego, a 3-mana rare sorcery. Choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. This is a Tron killer. For Draft and Sealed, this card's quite good because it's going to be able to grab, you know, one thing, but it's not amazing. So you probably want to put this in the sideboard until your opponent has like a giant bomb like Aurelia or something like that, then bring it in. For Standard, this card's going to see play in Dimir Control all day long, forever and ever. And in Modern, this is going to be a card that people are going to board into if they're in a like Esper Control list to grab like Tron lands and grab anything else, all the copies of it, without even having to have it hit, you know, the graveyard. So Unmoored Ego is very powerful all around. I think this thing is going to see a lot of play in a lot of different formats. Next up here, we got Vraska Golgari Queen, a 4-mana 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Vraska. It's a mythic. +2, you may sacrifice another permanent. If you do, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Keep in mind that's another permanent, not non-land permanent, so you could sack lands if you have extra lands. -3, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. And then -9, you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. This is okay, not amazing. It's not bad. I feel like it's going to need to have a lot of brewing to see this card see lots of good play somewhere. I think it is quite powerful with a -3, basically abrupt decay, which is pretty good. It also has an added ability here of you sacking a permanent and drawing a card, which is quite good. The emblem, though, I feel like in a Golgari aggressive list in Standard might be okay, but it feels like it will just be maybe an ability that's relegated to like Commander play, or just like Draft and Sealed play. Getting to that emblem is going to be quite difficult. You're going to need to +2 for 3 turns in a row and then -9. The cool thing here, though, is that it actually does survive if you -9, which is nice. But yeah, I'm not really too hot on this card overall. I think this card's quite okay, but definitely needs to see some brewing for sure for it to work for me for Standard. Next up, we've got We Dragonauts, a 3-mana 1/3 uncommon fairy wizard with flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, We Dragonauts gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I'm already brewing this for an Izzet spells list in Standard. I think it's a lot of fun. For Draft and Sealed, this card is amazing as well. A 3-mana 1/3 flyer is pretty good because it can, block those 2/2 flyers that are in the air for 3. But it can also, pump itself quite well. And trade with those 2/2s, or not trade, but destroy those 2/2s, or just get in for 3 points of damage or 5 points of damage and so on. I think it's very powerful despite that. So very, very good card overall. I think this card's going to see some play in Standard, going to see some play in Draft and Sealed. And yeah, it's a good reprint to see. I love it. And I love the art on this card as well. Next up, we've got World Soul Colossus, an X and green and white 0/0 elemental. This is an uncommon with Convoke. Enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. For Draft and for Sealed, this card is perfectly fine. Making it a 4/4/5/5, that's quite good. For Standard, this feels a little too slow. I don't think it's going to be out of the realm of impossibility to play this in Selesnya. So we'll see where this is going to sit in Standard for sure. But I think for Draft and Sealed, this card is really, really good. Being a 4/4 or 5/5 is quite good for the Convoke cost here. And of course, just paying regular mana too. And yeah, I think this will probably see a lot of play in a Commander deck as well. Just a lot of stuff here that I think that if it had maybe like Vigilance or Trample, this would put it over the edge, making it really good. But because it doesn't, it's just kind of okay. Moving up here, we have Fresh Face Recruit, a 2-mana 2/1 common human soldier. As long as it's your turn, Fresh Face Recruit has first strike. Really like this for a Boros list for Draft and Sealed. Might see some Standard play maybe, but probably not because of the 1 toughness here. Dies to Chainwhirler, that whole argument, But I think for the hybrid mana here for Draft and Sealed, this is perfectly fine. A very castable card for you. And it's just a 2/1 first striker on your turn, which is very good. So being very aggressive on turn 3 attacking in. So good card for you for Draft and Sealed. Not going to see any kind of play elsewhere. Next up, we've got Piston Fist Cyclops, a 3-mana 4/3 common Cyclops with Defender. As long as you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, Piston Fist Cyclops can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So this is probably okay. It's not necessarily amazing because of the 3 toughness, but a 3-mana 4/3 is always highly valued for Draft and Sealed. So I'm going to trade with something, obviously, or get in for 4 points of damage. And I think either of those abilities there is quite good, especially if you just cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. The issue I have is that you have to do this prior to attacking. Basically meaning you have to cast spells prior to attacking, which is usually not a good idea in combat. But if you have the mana to, cast something and then also have a combat trick up for you, that's probably perfectly fine. And next up, we have Pitiless Gorgon. This is a 3-mana 2/2 Gorgon with Death Touch. Simple, straightforward, and always going to see play Draft and Sealed. If it was a 2/2 Death Toucher, it might see, like a 2-mana 2/2 Death Toucher, it might see some Standard brew around play, but I feel like it's probably just a little too expensive for that format. Gifted Aetherborn from the Kaladesh block was one of the cards where it was a 2-mana 2/3 lifelink Death Toucher, which was very, very powerful, but it was 2 black mana, so it was kind of hard to deal with. So had this been the 2 hybrid mana with a 2/2 Death Touch, it might have seen some play in Standard, but I feel like it's probably just too expensive to see play anywhere else besides Draft and in Sealed. And we have, it's a Vernadi. This is Shield Mate. This is a 2-mana 2/2 Vigilance. Perfectly fine. Good to see a lot of play in a Selesnya deck in Drafted and Sealed. But again, just because it has Vigilance, I don't think it's going to see any kind of play outside of that. Just kind of an okay card. Very good for convoking because you can, attack in and block and also convoke, which is very good. Besides that, I don't think it's going to see any kind of play outside of that, outside of Draft and Sealed. We also have Whisper Agent here, a 3-mana 3/2 Human Rogue Flash. It also enters the battlefield to Surveil for 1. Very good for Dimir, all around great card, a 3/2 for 3. Always going to pick that. Also has Flash, so great attacker or blocker on your opponent's instep, or it's a blocking whenever your opponent attacks in. You have a Flash blocker, which is very good. Also Surveillance for 1, basically almost giving you extra value if it does trade with something the turn it comes into play. If it doesn't, it's just a 3/2 attacker, which is very good as well. So all around like this card, and of course like the art. So might see some standard play because it has Flash, but I think it's just going to see just some Draft and Sealed play, and it'll be all right with that. And now we're on to the flip cards. Let me flip these real quick. All right, we have the flip cards here. Let's get those over with. We have Assure here. This is a 2-mana instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains indestructible until end of turn. You also have a Symbol here, which is a 6-mana instant. Create 3 2/2 green and white Elf Knight creature tokens with Vigilance. This is a rare as well, so I think for Draft and Sealed, this card is very, very powerful. Being able to put stuff on, +1/+1 counters or something and giving it indestructible at instant speed. Very good for Draft and Sealed. And I also think in the mid to late game, if you have the mana and you can pay 6 here, creating 3 2/2s is very, very powerful as well. So for a Draft and Sealed, this is a huge bomb for you. Might even see some standard play just based on the symbol here. Assure is basically a protection spell, which is quite good. And yeah, I think this card is pretty good all around for Draft Seal. It might see some standard brew around. Next up, we have Connive and Concoct. Connive is a 4-mana sorcery. Gain control of target creature with power 2 or less. Seems like that's forever, which is crazy. And Concoct is a 5-mana sorcery. Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Concoct feels a lot more powerful than Connive. I feel like both are okay though for Draft and Sealed, especially if you're in the mid to late game for sure. In the early game, Connive is very useful. In the late game, Concoct is very useful. However, I don't think either of these abilities will see much play in standard. Concoct might, but it's just a little too expensive for my taste. You do get to Surveil for 3 though, which is quite good with the ability on top of it. So I think it's probably just going to be okay though for Draft and Sealed, and might not see any kind of play outside of that. Next, we have Discovery and Dispersal. Discovery is 2-mana sorcery. Surveil 2, then draw a card. Basically, preordain or whatever you want it to be. This is a very good card for you for Draft Sealed, and probably will see standard play for sure. Dispersal is 5-mana instant. Each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control to the with the highest converted mana cost among permanents they control to its owner's hand. Then discard a card. Dispersal is good for Draft and Sealed. Discovery is good for Draft, Sealed, and Standard. So really like this card for that. I think it will see a lot of play in that format. I think overall, though, it's just a great uncommon for you for Dimir, as well as just being a great card for you because it has hybrid mana and Discovery, just to see play maybe in a Esper control list as well. So very good card overall. Moving on, we've got Expansion to Explosion, one of my favorites here. Expansion is 2-mana instant. Copy target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. You may choose new targets for the copy. Next up is Explosion, an X and 4 instant. Deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards. I feel like both of these are probably okay for Draft and Sealed. Expansion feels like it's pretty good in an Izzet control list or an Izzet burn list. Explosion is also fantastic if you have lots of mana to dump into it for Izzet control in standard as well, or maybe even an Izzet Wizards list as well too. I think a lot of brewing around for this card for sure needs to be done. Just has a lot of stuff to do for one card here. But yeah, for Draft and Sealed, this is a great card if you have like a burn spell you want to copy. For 2 extra mana, you get to do that. Or if they're countering something, you get to counter that counter by copying the counter with Expansion. And Explosion, of course, gets you draw cards and does damage to your opponent. And I think both of those things are pretty good in Draft and in Sealed. So high draft pick for me if I'm in an Izzet deck. Next up, we have Find and Finality, a 2-mana sorcery. You return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and Finality is 6-mana sorcery. You may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. Then all creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. This is one of the other board rights we have in the format here for Finality. Going to see probably a lot of play in a standard Golgari list in a sideboard somewhere. I think Find is also very, very useful for Drafted and Sealed, especially because normally you only have 1 or 2 copies of a single creature card in Drafted and Sealed, and Find will help you get more of them into your from your graveyard back into your hand, which is quite good. It's also really aggressively costed as well, which is very, very good too. This will probably see some standard sideboard play, and of course we'll see some main board play in Drafted and Sealed. So overall, a great Golgari card for us. Next up, we have Flower to Flourish. This is Flower is a 1 white mana sorcery. Search your library for a basic forest or plains card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Then Flourish is a 6 mana sorcery uncommon. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Flower is very powerful here for us for Drafted and Sealed, and probably we'll see standard play as well. Hoping to get some mana for you for just 1 mana. That's crazy. And Flourish is quite good as well for Draft and Sealed, being able to pump your entire board state and attack in. A great way to end a match. Both of these are doing very good things for you for Draft and Sealed, so great for Selesnya, great for ramping, and great for just ending a game. Probably won't see any kind of play in Standard for Flourish, but Flower, you might see this in a Selesnya deck in Standard. Very, very close to being an amazing card for that format, so I really do like it a lot for that. Next up for us, we have Integrity and Intervention. Integrity is a 1 white mana instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and Intervention is a 4 mana instant. Deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. So Lightning Helix for 5 mana, or for 4 mana, sorry, not 5 mana, 4 mana. It's okay. For Draft and Sealed, it's going to see play, which is fine. Both of these are really good Draft and Sealed cards. Instant Speed Pump or an Instant Speed Removal spell, both are pretty good. For Standard, though, probably not going to see any kind of play because it's a little too narrow and a little too slow for Standard, but definitely going to see a lot of play for Draft and Sealed. Next up, we have Invert and Invent. Invert is a 1 mana instant. Switch the power and toughness of each of up to 2 target creatures. This should say at the end of turn. They actually just did an errata for this. It should say at the end of turn, so that's interesting. Invent is a 6 mana instant. Search your library for an instant and or sorcery card, reveal them, then put them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So grabbing up to 2 cards for 6 mana. Again, not terrible, but not great. Both of these cards are kind of awkward. Not really thinking they'll see much play in Draft or Sealed, honestly. And I don't think they're going to see much play in Standard. Where I think they will see play, though, is probably in a commander deck somewhere where you want to be, tutoring for some instant and sorcery spells, as well as being able to swap some things, toughness and power, which is kind of fun, kind of flavorful for Draft and Sealed, or not Draft and Sealed, for commander. Moving up here, we have Response and Resurgent. Response is a 2 mana instant. Response deals 5 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and Resurgent is a 5 mana sorcery. Creatures you control gain first strike and vigilance until end of turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Very interesting. I really do like Resurgence here as far as a great card to end a match in Drafted and Sealed. For Standard, these are both kind of annoying. Response is okay because it's basically Gideon's Reproach, which is fine, but it does 1 extra point of damage, which is actually kind of notable. So you might see Response in a Standard deck somewhere, in a Boros Standard deck, or just a mono white deck somewhere, because it is hybrid mana. But Resurgence, I feel like probably won't see any kind of play in Standard. Obviously, if Response is going to see play, Resurgence is going to see play too, because it's attached to the same card. I'm just saying that they're the sides of the cards there, because they're essentially 2 different cards. But yeah, I think that Response is good for Standard, Resurgence is good for Limited, and Response is also good for Limited as well as being a good removal spell. But both of these cards are quite good on a single card. And next up we have Status and Statue. Status is a 1 mana instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. And Statue is a 4 mana instant. Destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment. For Draft and Sealed, this is amazing because it's a great way for a combat trick to have removal as well on the same card. Very, very good. I feel like it probably isn't doing enough though for Standard, so probably won't see any kind of play in that particular format, but still fun for Draft and Sealed. And we're back to the artifacts here, so let's flip this back around. All right, we're into the artifacts here. This is a 3 mana artifact. You can tap it, you can pay or you add red or white to your mana pool, and you can pay 4, sack it, and draw 2 cards. Again, this is the Boros Locket, so good for you for Draft and Sealed. And having the ability to sack it and draw 2 cards is very good for the Boros colors. I don't know if this will see any kind of standard play. I feel like if it was a 2 mana, it would see standard play. But for Draft and Sealed, this feels very good. Very good at being able to mana fix you, and very good at being able to draw you cards in the mid to late game. So very good for Draft and Sealed for that. Moving up, we've got Chamber Sentry, an X and 0/0 construct. It's also a rare. Whenever it enters a battlefield with X +1/+1 counters for each color of mana you spent to cast it. So it could be a 1/1 or a 2/2, which is nice. Or if a 5/5, I guess. You can pay X, remove X +1/+1 counters from it. It deals X damage to any target. You can also pay all colors of the rainbow and return this card from your graveyard to your hand. This is okay for probably Commander, but not going to see any kind of play elsewhere. This feels very like reminiscent of like the original Ravnica set because of how restrictive the colors are. But I'm not really in love with it as far as a card that's going to see any kind of play outside of maybe Commander. Kind of terrible for Draft and Sealed. It's probably just going to be a 2/2 for you. And then, yeah, probably not going to get any kind of play whatsoever in Standard unless there's some weird combo deck where you need a creature to die because you can cast this for free. Next up, we have Chromatic Lantern, a great reprint for Commander. A 3-mana artifact rare. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. And you can also tap this and add 1 mana of any color. Both of these are great things for you. Very powerful for Commander. Very good mana fixer as well in Draft and Sealed. And might see some Standard play as well, since it is, of course, all the lands have mana fixing at that point. So this alongside the Sentry could be good. So if you get both of them, that's very good. But again, they're both rare, so very rare to see that in Draft and in Sealed. Moving up here, we have Dimir Locket. Again, all the Lockets do exactly the same thing, so we're just going to kind of speed by them, but they're very, very good for fixing. And of course, mid to late game card draw is quite good as well. Gatekeeper Gargoyle is a 6-mana 3/3 Gargoyle with flying. Gargoyle enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each gate you control. So a 6-mana 3/3 flyer is not that great, but a 6-mana 5/5 flyer is pretty good. So if you have at least 2 gates in your deck and you have the Gargoyle in your deck, I think it's probably worth it for Draft and in Sealed. But where this kind of falls apart is Standard. It's just too expensive to play for those formats. But for Draft and Sealed, it's perfectly usable. Next up, we have Glaive of the Guild Pack here. This is a 2-mana uncommon equipment artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each gate you control and has Vigilance and Menace. You can equip this for 3. This is probably not that great. The problem here is that if you have 1 gate, it's just +1/+0 and Vigilance and Menace, which is probably fine for the amount of mana you're costing on this. And if you have 2 gates, it's +2, which is probably fine as well. It's just that if you don't have a gate, it does nothing except give your creature Vigilance and Menace, which is not that great for the amount of mana you're spending for this. So I'm not really too crazy on this card. I think it's probably fine if you have gates in your deck for Draft and Sealed, which you probably will. And if you do, then this is probably fine for it. But it's probably a card I might pass up pretty much every single time I see it, just because of how like narrow and specific it has to be for your deck list. Next up, we've got Golgari Locket. Again, the Locket, pretty powerful, great mid to late game card draw for us. Then we have the Izzet Locket. The Izzet Locket, I really love the art on this one, very pretty. And of course, taps for blue, red, and of course the mid to late game card draw, very nice. And Rampaging Monument here is a 4-mana 0/0 Cleric uncommon with Trample. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Rampaging Monument. This is actually not terrible at all. I think this card's quite good if you have a lot of multicolored or split cards in your deck list in Draft and Sealed. And this is probably a card that will definitely see some play in a Commander list as well. The best part about this card is that it has Trample. So it's a 3/3 that has Trample that gets more powerful as you cast spells. So I think this is one of the best cards I've seen so far with the +1/+1 counter ability on it that gets larger as it goes whenever you cast multicolor spells. So a very good card for you. 4 mana though for a 3/3 Trample on first hit is probably not that great. But again, it grows as you cast stuff in Draft and Sealed, so probably worth it if you have lots of split cards or lots of multicolor cards in your deck. Next up, we have Selesnya Locket. Again, a very nice and pretty locket for you. And Silent Dart, one of the best artifacts in the set here. A one colorless mana artifact, uncommon. You can pay for a tap and sacrifice the dart. It deals 3 damage to target creature. So it's basically a removal spell. Really wish we could do multiple times, but we cannot. We have to sacrifice the dart. But I think it's quite good because, again, it's a thing you can get on the battlefield on turn 1 if you don't have a turn 1 play, and you can just kind of sit there the entire match until your opponent plays something you don't want to have on the field, and you just boop, dart it, and it's gone. So great for Draft and Sealed. Not that great anywhere else, though, sadly. Next up, we have Wand of the Vertebrae, or Wand of Vertebrae, is a 1-mana uncommon artifact. You can tap it, put the top card of your library into your graveyard, not 2 cards, but the top card. And you can tap it and exile the Vertebrae here. Shuffle up to 5 target cards from your graveyard into your library. Timepiece, this is not. I really wish it would just you exile this and then you shuffle your entire graveyard back into your library. That would be great. This is probably more meant for a Golgari perhaps. But not that great for me as far as a card where if you're getting milled against in your deck list in Draft and Sealed or in Standard, this is a card you probably don't want to board in at all. So I'm not a big fan of this card at all. It does throw things into your graveyard, which is nice for a Golgari deck for Draft and Sealed, but Besides that, it's not like that fantastic. But again, you know, you can pay 2 sack it and put 5 cards that you did throw into your graveyard back into your deck again. So could help with that. Could give you a couple extra turns, especially in Draft and Sealed, where you know you're pitching a lot of things in the graveyard if you're Golgari, and can help you not mill yourself to death basically. Let's see here, and now we're finally on to our lands here. That was all of the artifacts. Not a lot of artifacts at all. Basically the lockets, and that's basically it. But just going to quickly go through the lands here. We got Boros Guildgate, a great Guildgate force, and they actually have 2 versions of the Guildgate here, which is nice. I love the art on these, both of these here. Of course, they're coming in tapped. All the Guildgates come in tapped, and then tap for their respective colors. So Boros taps for red and white. And then we have Dimir, which taps for blue and black. And again, they have 2 different types, which is very, very nice, very pretty. And then Gateway Plaza here is a common gate. When it enters the battlefield tapped, and then whenever it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay for 1 colorless, but it taps for any color mana ever. So I like this card a lot because it helps you with mana fixing on turn 2. Play a land and then play this on turn 2, and you have a land that can tap for any color mana you need to. So this helps with those really restrictive mana requirements in Drafted and Sealed. So really like it for that, and goes along nicely with Guildgates. And next up we've got Golgari Guildgate. Again, really nice art on these. For the Guildgates here, very pretty. I love this one the most with the upside down clock tower looking thing. That's pretty cool. Guildmage Forum is a rare land. You can tap it to add colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it, add 1 mana of any color. If that mana is spent on a multicolored creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So this is probably more suited for a commander list somewhere. I feel like we have a card similar to this. I just can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's quite good if you have a lot of multicolored spells in your deck list, so that's good for that. But besides that, it's not tapping for any color mana, which is kind of bad in Drafted and Sealed, especially because of how restrictive the mana requirements are in Drafted and Sealed at the moment. So Guildmage's Forum might just be good for a commander deck or a standard deck, and probably nothing else. Moving up, we've got Izzet Guildgate. I almost said Guildmage again. Izzet Guildgate. Love the art on this one, and I love the art on this one. Very similar as far as the look of them, but super cool looking. Overgrown Tomb. We're on to the Shocklands here, and of course Shocklands, if you guys didn't know, are in this set as well. So lots of good stuff within this entire set. Swamp Forest, it's a rare. It enters the battlefield. You may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. And that's basically the ability on all the Shocklands, and they're all quite powerful. Overgrown Tomb is very, very good here. Sacred Foundry, again, very, very powerful. And again, they're all going with the different guild gates or guilds we have in Guilds of Ravnica here. Selesnya and Golgari, this is for the one that's entering tapped. It's not a Shockland. Another guild gate here, very nice on the art. Steam Vents, probably one of the best Shocklands, I feel like. It's the one that is usually the most expensive that I've been seeing. Then we have a Temple Garden, the Selesnya Shockland here, very nice as well. And the Watery Grave. This is the other Shockland for Dimir, so very nice as well. And I think that's actually all the cards besides the foil lands, which you get. I think these are random here. Not really too sure where these are coming from. And then the last card here is going to be the buy box promo. Yeah, Impervious Great Worm here. So if you buy a box from your local game store, you'll be getting this as a buy box promo on top of it. It is a 10 mana, sorry, 8, 9, 10, yeah, 10 mana, 16/16, indestructible with Convoke. It's not as good as Nexus of Fate, obviously, but you're definitely going to probably see lots of play in Standard and Commander. For sure. Love the art on this card, and I think because of the Convoke on top of this, this is a card that might see some play in a mono green stompy deck in Standard somewhere. Maybe in a sideboard if they're not up against like a counterable deck, like a control deck. Throw this out against another mono green stompy deck. It's a 16/16 indestructible card. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's one of these cards that's like, if you don't have Exile Hate, then this card is just going to destroy you. Obviously, it doesn't have Trample, which is the best part, because if it had Trample, this card would be insanely bonkers. But it can kill you in 2 hits, and that's always fun, right? Yeah, Impervious Great Worm is your buy box promo for Guilds of Ravnica. And that is all of the cards of Guilds of Ravnica. So many cards for Guilds of Ravnica, so many good cards as well. This is probably one of the most pushed sets we've had in several years. One of my favorites to go back to as far as planes. Really does feel like Return to Ravnica, which is really nice. Cannot wait for the next set for the Azorius Guild and all that kind of stuff, because that's more my speed. But I love Dimir in this set as well. I think it's very powerful. I think as far as mechanics, Surveil is the most powerful for, like, you know, card advantage and mid-game advantage and things like that, especially if you're ahead or behind. I think Mentor is the best if you're ahead. And I think Convoke is just okay overall. There's really not a lot of good Convoke cards really in this format, but there are a lot of good Selesnya cards overall, which is good value. So this concludes the set review. I'll be doing a pre-release video, and then the next video will be a draft and sealed guide for Guilds of Ravnica, going over the top 5 commons and uncommons of each particular color, and as well as the guilds as well. So hope you guys tune in for that. Like this video if you like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I love you all, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more awesome MTG content just like this. And make sure to tap the bell icon to be notified whenever a video is made live. If you want to keep watching content, here are 2 more videos for you. This video and many others are sponsored by MTGO Traders and Cape Fear Games. Buy and sell digital singles to build your online collection today with MTGO Traders, and get your paper singles, accessories, and much more from Cape Fear Games. Whatever your Magic needs, both places have you covered.